Hi, today I'm joined by Tim Bennett, who's one of two candidates running for the Planning Board in the town of Plymouth. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks
We're going to get
me.
right into the questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Accessory dwelling units. This controversial bylaw recently passed at town meeting. Did you agree with this? And what is your opinion on potential negative ramification and positive outcomes?
I was very much in favor of it, actually. The impact, I don't believe, in my opinion, is very much at all. It's very small units are allowed. I haven't read all of the specifics of the requirements, but some of them. And I think some of the arguments that the impacts may be an increased septic flow. From my experience, having been I've designed septic systems, I've been a soil evaluator and a septic inspector. The increase in flow is, I'm not going to say negligible, but not big. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a valid argument for shooting it down. Mm-hmm. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of it. To allow seniors to remain in their homes, perhaps by performing the swap, where the senior conveys the home to family or whatever and lives in the ADU unit, and the family allows them to stay together. I think that's a tremendous benefit. Mm-hmm. I don't see hardly any downside. Perhaps construction, but that's temporary. I think relative to the septic increase in flow, most cases, a construction like that will probably trigger an upgrade to the septic system. So replacing an old septic or cesspool, mm-hmm. which provides no treatment, you'd be getting a new septic system that actually treats the sewage rather than just dumping it into a hole in the ground.
So the outcome from that home might actually be better in the long run.
In the long run, yes.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So that's for seniors. Now, what other uses do you see ADUs for?
Well, I believe, and this is kind of conjecture on my part, because I've seen other ADU regulations, and I work in about 30 different towns in my job, so I see a lot of regulations, and some good ones and some ones that not so good.
Yeah.
But I believe it has to be one of the residents of the structure has to be the owner.
Right.
So
you can't rent both of them out.
Right. So it's not going to be an Airbnb.
Right. Right.
We've got more than enough of those. So I think that it basically allows for family to remain in the same home. Mm-hmm. It allows a way for people to be able to afford to keep their home. These days, with the rising cost of real estate, the rising taxes, mm-hmm. I think it's a great benefit all around. I don't see a downside.
Right. Do you think that young people will take advantage of this?
I would hope so. I think that's a great possibility. I know I may well have taken advantage of it when I was in my early 20s,
mm-hmm.
my teens, when I was getting on my feet.
Yeah.
And to have a kind of a separate living space, to have some freedom and separation. That's, I think, any young adult would like
welcome
that.
Yeah.
Rather than the mom's basement sort of arrangement.
Yeah.
Because it's a separate living quarter. I think it's a.
You think it's a win-win?
Oh, totally. I think town meeting did the right thing in approving that.
Do you see any problems with parking? And I'm thinking really if these are ADUs that are like in the downtown area, mm-hmm. which is already pretty congested.
Right.
Now, if you bring in another person to park,
mm-hmm. Right.
Your opinion on that?
So, parking is always a challenge. Every project I've seen developed, parking is, depending on how the regulations are written, there's either too much or too little. Mm-hmm. Usually too little, but we don't want to cover the world with pavement either. And parking on impervious or pervious surfaces is always a better alternative. Certainly, if and that is more relevant not in the downtown area.
Right.
Downtown parking is at a premium. I think that every case is different, and I'm a big believer in balance. Let's listen to both sides. Mm-hmm. Let's look at who's going to benefit, who is going to be impacted, and if I'm correct, and I don't know if you know, if it's required, it's a special permit that's required for
I believe
this.
So. Yep.
So if that's the case, then there's oversight and there's analysis of the issues like parking, mm-hmm. Like setbacks, things like that. Perhaps screening to parking, things like that either that the Zoning Board of Appeals can help mitigate the negative impacts.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. We're going to be talking about the Plymouth Holtec land and the Nuclear Mitigation Stabilization Fund. Okay. The 1,530 acres will eventually go up for sale, and with the addition of the $500,000 that was just voted on at town meeting, the fund is nearing $10 million. Plymouth will have the first right of refusal on that land. What are your thoughts on this fund and the land's future use?
I'm really glad you asked. I live near there.
Okay.
And I actually ride my mountain bike in the Pine Hills fairly regularly. Not as much as I'd like. I love that area.
Okay.
I think town meeting was, I'm proud of them, I guess, if that's the right way to put it, but that they did something really forward-looking by putting money away towards the future. We know something is coming. Plymouth hasn't had a real good history of planning for the future. We have a master plan. There was a master plan that was kind of a vision, but just a vision,
right,
without a plan. And I'll probably say it again: a vision without a plan is kind of a dream. So I believe we should do everything we can to control that land. And I just spoke with Lee Hartman a couple days ago, and he said that they have applied for a grant and it's something over $300,000 to develop a master plan for that land.
Just for that land?
Just for the Holtec land, yeah. And it's no guaranteed. We don't have the grant yet, but we've applied, and fingers crossed we get that, and we can start planning for it, which is kind of what I'm after, is planning.
Right. Now it's almost 1,500 acres. So if it were up to you, if you got to sign off on what was going to be done there, what would you want to see put there? So
I think that the beautiful areas up on the hill, I think should be preserved as open space.
The high
absolutely, there's no question.
Okay.
The areas along Powerhouse Road, which actually is not a road, it's a driveway, but those potentially would be a good place for some development. Perhaps some commercial, high-tech, medical, something like that. Development that creates good jobs, and specifically the medical area is one type of commercial development that really provides a lot of living wage jobs. And to not have to have, or to have people be able to stay in Plymouth and not have to commute to Boston to get a good job is, one of my big picture goals, kind of long range. But I think that there's obviously there'll need to be buffering to the residential areas.
Do you see residential areas also being developed there, or do you see this more as a commercial area?
I really don't think residential would be the best fit there.
Okay.
There's no sewer. I know there has been some study of possible water source there. I don't think it really panned out, but I think the residential development needs to be better managed. And that area just seems to me, we have the Pine Hills, and the Pine Hills is a great development. They pay a substantial amount of our taxes. But I think that area is just so unique and so special that I just don't see it being the right fit to have more residential development there.
Okay, so
maybe there's pockets in there, and I haven't studied the whole, how much they own and everything like that. Perhaps abutting some of the existing residential development, maybe. The problem with residential development is we extend the infrastructure. We have to extend our infrastructure, roads and drain and water and so on.
But don't you have to do that with commercial also?
We do. However, the commercial pays taxes at a higher rate. And so looking at it this way, a residential development, a average typical home pays about $7,000 in taxes on average. And it costs the town in services 20-ish, and I've heard people quote 3,000 either way from that. But essentially, residential development is a net revenue loss for the town. And we can't afford that at this point. We're looking at a tax increase. I think that commercial development will bring the good jobs, will bring the tax revenue, will bring the revenue to the town, that can help reduce the tax burden, the residential tax burden.
Okay, so for the Holtec land itself, you definitely agree that some of the pristine areas should be left alone.
Absolutely.
And some of it should be developed in a commercial sense. Do you have any issue with how high a building can be built For example, if a high-tech medical company wants to come in and they want to build a campus, and that one of their buildings needs to be 10 stories high, is that a deal breaker?
It may well be. It really depends on. I wouldn't make a decision on something like that until I saw the proposal.
Okay.
For one, but 10-story, I think that's a little beyond the pale. 3, possibly 5. I mean, we've recently zoned areas for 5-story development. I think that area is not really. I don't know. I just don't see a 10-story as.
I'm just wondering.
I don't think I have an exact cutoff.
Leniency your opinion would be on if something good came in there, but it required a height differential.
Yeah, I think something within reason. I think that it's something that would blend with the area, with good planning, good landscape architecture thinking.
Okay.
Part of my firm, we have landscape architects. They're brilliant, and they have found ways. We've done projects that screen bigger buildings because that's what people want, is bigger houses and things like that, and to try to make them fit the landscape. So perhaps a campus development, it really definitely deserves consideration. I'm not proposing that, yes, we go ahead and do commercial development there. I'm thinking that that's one of the possibilities that could help reduce the residential tax burden.
Absolutely. So you agree with the fact that we're going to keep funding that fund to buy that land?
I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay, question number 3. The woodlot is 100 plus acres of land owned by the county and leased currently to Boston South. A controversial proposal for a horse racetrack was not approved, and their future plans for use of this land have not been officially presented. What would you, as a member of the planning board, like to see done with that land?
So, unfortunately, that project is going to come before the planning board at some point. I haven't seen any of the concepts that I've heard have been floated about. I haven't seen anything on it. And I really don't think that I really shouldn't comment on something that I may end up having to vote on down the road.
But like you said, you haven't seen any.
I haven't seen anything really.
No,
I've heard
there has been.
I've heard Facebook rants about 20,000 units.
Nothing's officially been proposed for that land.
Right.
But if it were up to you, what would you like to see done on that land?
I think it's adjacent to an industrial park, which is where we've decided that industrial, commercial, high-tech development should go.
Right.
I think that I believe it, and I don't know a lot about the site itself. I've kind of shied away from it actually because I want to be impartial. Part of my goal is to be even-handed, balanced, look at both sides of the story, listen more than I speak, and but I think an industrial park is where we've decided. Our zoning has said that is where industrial, commercial development should go, and we need the commercial development, like we've said, with the to relieve that residential tax burden. So, however, I think it abuts some residential property. So I'd want to see a lot of buffering.
Okay.
A lot of buffering. For example, like the Oasis has some buffering. I remember back in the day when that was being discussed that there were a lot of arguments about the buffering. And I think that, a different use that's going to impact people's lives and potentially their property values should be very well buffered away from them.
Right.
So maybe not the entire parcel, but I think the stuff that's adjacent to the industrial park, that's what it's there for.
Right. Now, since Plymouth does not own that land, the county owns that land, how much right of refusal does the town of Plymouth have to what goes on that land legally? So
we can't tell them no, because you'll if you follow Facebook, which I've started doing as part of this campaign, a lot of people are thinking absolutely have to stop all the building, and unfortunately that's not legal.
You mean you can't tell them no as to no building?
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, you're
not talking about a specific project.
Right.
Okay.
So the town has zoning regulations, planning regulations. All of these things give the town leverage to work with the developer, because saying no isn't going to work. If we say no, absolutely not, turn a blind eye, we're going to end up with another 40B, which we don't need.
Because, can you just explain to the people who are watching this, why would that happen?
So when the developer comes to us with a plan,
Yeah.
and we essentially vote against it, say no, say the planning board denies it, or
Yeah.
the zoning board of appeals, whoever is the governing body in that, the developer has the right, they own the land, or quasi own the land, whatever entity it works out to be. So our economic system is based on private ownership of land.
Right.
So it would be unconstitutional to tell them you can't build on your land, period. We
Right.
have to work out a solution. And that's where, I'm interested in working with both sides, hearing
Right.
what they have to say, working with them rather than against them, because if we work against them, they're going to throw up their hands and they're going to revert to the state law that says we can build a 40B and you don't get to say whether we do or not.
And they can do that because we don't yet have the 10% of
That's
the
correct.
housing that is
Yes.
required per town for it's affordable housing.
Right.
And Plymouth is nowhere near that.
I think we're at 6-ish%, somewhere in that range.
Okay. So that ties towns' hands, really.
It completely does.
Okay.
And we have 2 or 3 of those projects coming down the pipeline that are 40Bs because the developer wants to maximize their revenue. The problem with the 40B is that, yes, 25% of the units are set aside as affordable.
Yep.
But affordable is defined by the median income in the Boston-Cambridge area
Right,
for us, which is absurd.
Which is absurd.
It is. It's actually, I looked it up, it's for a three-person family, it's like $106,000 is what the median income would need to be.
Yeah.
That's not affordable.
Yeah.
And we sort of have a gap, and I haven't studied it completely, but there's sort of a gap where we're not helping those who can support themselves but may need a little help with rent or trying to own a piece of property.
Right.
And that's something I'd like to work on and learn more about. I'm by no means an expert in housing, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of your questions coming might be about housing. But
Well, you brought it up, so I'd like to follow up on that. So affordable housing, now ADUs obviously are a pretty cool way to get some affordable housing out there. But I think of young people that they can't buy a house right now. I mean, look at what the housing prices are. So what do we do? Now, a land bank has been determined that would be an idea for the town, that if the town owns land, that they can decide what goes on that land, not a developer.
Right.
So what is your feeling about a land bank, and then the land bank being able to be utilized, some of it or some of them, for workforce housing for young people?
I'm glad you brought it up. That's actually one of the planks in my platform, is I would love to see a land bank developed for Plymouth. It's a bit of an uphill battle, and I've talked with Lee Hartman about it, and he said it's possible and it's doable, and we have a lot of really smart people working on it. I've done work for the Nantucket Land Bank and seen the tremendous benefit it's had for that community.
Why do people not want a land bank?
It's a tax. There's a tax involved. It's a real estate transfer tax, and the way it's being written, or the way it's, and it's in progress here, so I don't know all the details, and that's actually, I'd like to start attending some of those meetings and learn more about it. But from what I've read, it would be a tax to the buyer.
Okay. So anyone who buys real estate in Plymouth
Right.
has a tax.
It would be a tax. And there's a lot of caveats to that, where if you're moving from one place in Plymouth to another, it may be waived.
Okay.
It may be waived for first-time home buyer, something like that. But so that's the downside. The money's got to come from somewhere, right?
Right. Obviously, right.
So
right.
and it would be a tax. But as you said, if we own the land, we can control the land.
Right.
If we control the land, we can determine how it's used.
Right.
And I think this land bank that is being worked on has some interesting options to it that Nantucket does not. Nantucket's land bank is strictly open space, which kind of limits things that can be done with it. So if there were more options to it, the municipal options, whether, if, say we figure out 10 years down the road, we're going to need a school over here. And, piece of property comes up on the market and we have land bank money, we can purchase that and you know that, okay, we're going to need a school in about 5 or 6 years down here. Wouldn't it be great if we owned the property already?
Right,
You know,
right.
it would be-
Okay. All right, so you're yes on land bank.
Yes.
Okay. What are your greatest hopes for the town of Plymouth, and what are your greatest fears for the town of Plymouth?
So my hope is that we have a community where people can afford to live here, that we don't end up like Cape Cod, where the people that work there can't afford to live there, that we have lots of open and recreational space that's in the areas where it belongs, that we have a vibrant commercial, and in Plymouth, because we're so big, it'll be multiple centers of commercial activity. We have our village centers where the commercial activity should be centered, and the previous master plan laid out some of that, and I think the new master plan that's in progress will lay it out, and from what I'm told, we'll actually have a plan to make it happen as well, which is key. Like I said, a vision without a plan is a dream.
Right, right.
So, so I guess both sides of that. My fear is we end up with being a retirement community of rich people, and I have no problem with rich people. They've earned their money, and I can respect that. But we need to have it's not homogenous, but
A blend.
blended society where we have people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And I think Plymouth is a long way towards that. I think we do have a pretty diverse community. That's the word I was looking for. So a place where my kids can afford to live, perhaps, if they choose, I would hope so.
Yeah,
And our children's children. I mean, this is what we decide today is going to affect our children and our children's children. It's going to be long term.
Right.
So, I'd love for Plymouth to be the small town I grew up in, but those days are long gone.
Yeah. Can't usually go back.
No,
Yeah.
where I could ride my bike to school.
Yeah.
It was 2 miles away or whatever. I wouldn't, that's not really
Right.
a viable option
Right.
now. So, yeah, hopes and dreams, lots of them.
Yeah.
And what I want to do on the planning board is develop plans to bring those things to fruition, to help put development where it belongs, ease up on the taxes for the residents, and just make it, the Plymouth that I love.
Now, you said in the beginning something about you like to listen more than you like to talk. What is your view on the lack of civility that some of our discussions regarding all kinds of things about Plymouth have, and how can you help stop that?
That's a very good question, and I don't want to use the word disgusting, but I find it terrible that we can't have a civil discussion between people who have different viewpoints. And actually, in my profession as a land surveyor, unfortunately, we often get called in when there's a boundary dispute.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because you need a land surveyor when you have a boundary dispute. So I've done a lot of work with, and actually some study on dispute resolution and how to get people to talk to each other. It's not easy. And I am very adamant that my vote is my own. It doesn't belong to any political party. It doesn't belong to any special interest. I make the decision, but that decision is guided by the residents and the community of Plymouth and what I think is best for Plymouth, not what's best for any special interest. And listening to all the different sides of the story. There may be more than two. Somebody told me recently that something profound was that for every square foot in Plymouth, there are at least 10 competing interests and uses. And deciding which of those uses and which of those interests in possible development or preservation, where do they belong? And that's zoning and master planning.
Right.
But as far as being civil, I think the only thing I can do is lead by example.
So I was going to ask you, if you get elected to the planning board, you're one of 5.
Yes.
So how would you take that lead by example and apply it to your position on the planning board? So
I think that my position on the planning board is very much to listen. I tease my kids or tell them, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in proportion.
Yeah.
So what I haven't seen in the board is a lot of debate, and I don't know how much debate and discussion is appropriate. I think it is appropriate. How much I don't know, and I don't have the job yet, so I don't know totally how it works. But I've been in front of planning boards, and for the most part, there's the proponent of a project presents it. The members of the board ask questions, and different members ask different questions and different types of questions, and some may be more probing than others, which is absolutely correct, as it should be. And then the members, I think, make a decision on their own.
And majority rules.
Then absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But listening, I think, is the key. And I've seen, and actually, I don't think I've experienced it personally because I sit on two other committees. I sit on the Roads Advisory Committee, and I'm also a member of the Bennett Village Steering Committee, currently chair of the Roads Advisory Committee. So that's been an interesting experience of how to make sure everybody gets their say.
Yep. Okay. Great. All right, we're gonna let you have a 2-minute little time to the camera, so you can talk to the residents and tell them why they should vote for you.
Hello. So my name's Tim Bennett. I'm running for planning board. I have 2 minutes to tell you why I should earn your vote. Our job as public officials is not to tell the residents of what Plymouth should look like. The residents of Plymouth have their own vision for Plymouth, one they will provide as part of the master plan process, which will be ultimately approved by town meeting. Our job is to create plans to help achieve that vision because, as I've said before, a vision without a plan is just a dream. My understanding of land use makes me uniquely qualified to help develop these plans as a member of the planning board. I've been a professional land surveyor for over 30 years, a licensed septic inspector and soil evaluator. I'm currently chair of the Plymouth Roads Advisory Committee, which I served on for 10 years to date, and I also serve as a member of the Bennett Village Steering Committee. I know the town and I understand how to balance growth and preservation. To those upset about overdevelopment in Plymouth, I totally, absolutely understand your concerns. But as much as we may want to stop all new building, we legally cannot. Plymouth is going to grow whether we want it to or not. But we can and we must do is direct development into areas where it makes sense and carefully protect those areas where it doesn't make sense. At the same time, we need to encourage responsible commercial growth that will reduce the residential tax burden and provide good jobs for Plymouth residents. To help accomplish these goals, one of my plans is to work to develop a land bank for Plymouth. I've worked for the Nantucket Land Bank and seen tremendous benefit it can provide. Simply put, if we own the land, we can control it and determine its future. A land bank will help us achieve that goal. I will provide professional and unbiased leadership to plan Plymouth's future. All residents deserve to be heard and treated with respect, and proposals for Plymouth's future require careful consideration by hardworking professional leaders. I hope you'll support me for the planning board on May 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
We wish you the best of luck during the campaign and for this election season, and please do make your vote count by voting on or before May 18th in the Plymouth Town elections. Thank you and good day.